Hi, my name is Jean Sham, and I want to welcome you to Operation Parent and commend you for taking the time to watch this next segment on drugs and alcohol and how to parent through them. Operation Parent is a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to educate parents and grandparents and caregivers on today's teen culture. And while we address about 40 different issues that can really hurt our children, drugs and alcohol continues to remain at the very top of our list. Mary Beth is about to provide and share some frightening statistics and trends with you. Trends about how our kids are accessing and abusing alcohol, marijuana, prescription medications, and now even heroin. But the most frightening trend of all, to me, is how early our kids are starting to mess with this stuff, oftentimes as early as the 4th and 5th grade. You know, when I started Operation Parent 8 years ago, I truly believed that the target market for receiving this type of information were parents of high schoolers. Unfortunately and sadly, what we've witnessed over these years is this type of behavior has trickled down into middle school and now late elementary school. And it doesn't matter whether our kids are white or black, Hispanic, rich, poor, East Coast, West Coast, because all our kids are at risk now. These drugs are everywhere and easily accessed by our children. And what fuels the fire and makes it even worse is when parents are naive or passive. So whether you're raising a middle school, an elementary school, or a high schooler, it's never too early to get this information and talk to your children. Raising your awareness is the first step to raising an incredible teenager. So grab a cup of coffee and get ready to become empowered with the life-saving information that Mary Beth's about to share with you. And after we're done, we'll share some more great resources to help you on this journey. Keep parenting.
Hi parents, my name is Mary Beth Huberty and I'm with Operation Parent. And thank you for being here today. We have a really important topic to cover. We're going to talk a little bit about the teen brain or the adolescent brain that starts to develop rapidly at age 12. But then we're going to move into alcohol, the most abused drug by our youths. That's anybody under the age of 21. And what you need to know and discuss with your kids so that they can avoid lifelong addictions like alcoholism. In our other segment, we're going to talk about some of the other drugs that our kids are getting into, such as marijuana, prescription drugs, and heroin. What you as parents can do to get into the middle of this, to prevent this from happening in your family. So let's just talk a little bit about how things are different from when you were a teenager. Some of the statistics are a little bit alarming. You know, by the time they're 17, 70% of kids say they have been offered illegal drugs. 80% of high schoolers and 44% of middle schoolers have personally witnessed things like illegal drug use, drug deals, illegal drug possession, and students coming to school drunk or high on drugs. So things are different. And this is why it's so important to understand these years that they are changing rapidly for them. They're physically changing, but their brain is changing, and why it's so important to get in there. Let's start with the brain. At age 12, you know, we all talk about, oh, it's adolescent time, it's puberty. You can see the outward changes that are going on. The kids get taller. In some cases, the voices change. Developmentally, they're changing, their bodies are changing, but a lot is going on inside the head, the brain. And there are some areas of the brain that you really need to understand what is happening and how vital it is to keep your children off of alcohol and illicit drugs. In two of the areas of the brain, we have the cerebellum is a great one to start with. That supports the higher learning, math, science, advanced social skills, and it is in vast development at this time. This is the time in their lives where they have the use it or lose it going on in the brain. The things that they do more often, those pathways get strengthened in the brain. The things that they maybe decide, I don't want to be playing music anymore, or I'm not going to play that sport, or maybe that subject's not my best, so I just don't try as hard, then they will lose those pathways. Those connections over time will just filter away. So this is a high time for learning. This is why all of a sudden your kids are realizing, oh, I know more than you do, maybe about math or about science. They're able to absorb the information at this stage of life. So it's a use it or lose it that's going on. And the cerebellum is one of those areas that is in high development. And then right behind the cerebellum is what's called the brainstem. This is an important feature of the brain. The brainstem controls your breathing, your heart, your waking and sleeping. It is the part of the brain that never sleeps until the day you die. So that's the brainstem. Another kind of neat area of the brain that's developing is the hippocampus. That's in the temporal lobe, and these are all in the back part of the brain. The hippocampus deals with long-term memory. This is where you store your memories. So again, this is in rapid development. The amygdala is also there. The amygdala is the emotional center of the brain. A lot of times during these years of adolescence, a lot of kids will deal with anxiety, or they feel scared and they don't know why. And that's part of the amygdala. It's that fight or flight response that's going on, and it's heightened during these years. So the amygdala is the emotional center of the brain. Now we move to the front part of the brain. Something that we have learned through research for a long time, scientists believe the brain fully developed around 21 years of age. But because of new research and MRIs that they can do on the brain, they have found that the brain actually doesn't fully mature until about 24. And the brain tends to mature from the back to the front. So we have the frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe is the executive center of the brain, if you want to call it that. And what it allows the brain to do is to reason, to do problem solving, judgment, impulse control, the ability to stop themselves from just reacting and going with it. And it's also the place where it controls the emotions. Now, something to keep in mind, the brain, as I keep mentioning, is in rapid construction. The back part of the brain also has the reward center and the risk center, and they develop faster than the front part of the brain. The brain develops from the back to the front. So, in the risk and the reward center of the brain, this is where teens or adolescents go through those stages where they try things, new things, which is good. They need to take constructive, reasonable risk. And the reason for that is it builds self-confidence, but also it allows them, as they continue to get older, to separate and become adults. So risk is heightened at this time. And then there's good risk, risk that has a reasonable reward, reasonable challenge to it. But then there's the other side of risk, which is the risk that can be just downright dangerous. But reward is also developing at this time. Reward could be for an adolescent the praise of their peers, which is so important to them during this time. The recognition of the peers can be your recognition by saying, hey, good job, or you did a really good job, or you're really working hard there and I can see that. So that is also reward to them, all various types of reward. But with the risk and reward accelerating in the brain during these years, you've got to remember the frontal lobe, which is the judgment center. The ability to control impulse has not fully developed. And that won't fully develop till around 24. So with the brain in this massive development, the ability for them to make quick decisions without seeing the future consequence is not there yet. Learning process for them, trial and error. We introduce alcohol, drugs, prescription drugs, some of the drugs that are out there, illicit drugs that are out there on the market right now, to that brain that's under development, it'll change the fundamental function of the brain. So parents, it's really important to understand basic things. back of the brain to the front is the development cycle. High risk, reward, use it or lose it, learning, all those things are happening fast. But the front of the brain, the judgment center, the ability to control emotions, impulse control, will be one of the last areas to fully develop. So parents, let's talk about the most abused drug by our youth, and that is alcohol. For a lot of youth and for a lot of parents, they think it's a rite of passage, it's just something they're going to do, so, let's try to minimize the risk. Something you have to keep in mind, and the reason why we talked about the brain earlier, is that with alcohol or with any one of these drugs, people tend to think, well, the target organ is, say with alcohol, the liver. Well, actually, the target organ for alcohol or for any of these drugs that we're going to talk about is the brain. It changes the fundamental function of the brain. So keep that in mind, and that's why it's so important to understand its development. There is a survey that's given out to all 8th graders, 10th graders, and 12th graders throughout the country called Monitoring the Future. And it's a survey that asks simple questions as, what's your cigarette usage? Do you smoke? How often do you smoke? How about alcohol usage? Have you tried it? Do you consume it in the past 30 days on a regular basis? Do you consume every day? Do you binge drink? But Monitoring the Future is done every year. And so a lot of the statistics that I will use in this presentation is coming from that survey. And the important thing to keep in mind is these are answers from your 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. So alcohol. Keep in mind, a lot of people say, when do I start talking? Well, by 8th grade, 33% of 8th graders have tried alcohol. By 12th grade, 70% have tried alcohol. In the past 30 days, 25% aged 12 to 20 drink alcohol on a regular basis. And then binge drinking. Binge drinking is consuming 4 or 5 alcoholic beverages within a 2-hour period. 16% of those reporting in this survey reported they are binge drinking. And we'll talk more about binge drinking in a little bit. Remember I said the brain is developing. Well, your brain, when you're an adolescent, responds differently to alcohol than when you are an adult and your brain has already matured. So there's a lot of risk with introducing alcohol to a teenager's brain or an adolescent's brain. With that survey, it said the percentage of 8th graders who have tried alcohol. On the average, the first time boys try alcohol is by the age of 11. For girls, it's 13. So it's never too early to start this discussion, because by 4th grade, 3rd, 4th grade, 5th grade, they are trying alcohol for the first time if they're boys, on an average. Another thing to keep in mind is the statistic that states if youth who start drinking before the age of 15 are 5 times more likely to develop alcohol dependence or abuse later in life than those who begin drinking at or after 21. Now that's 5 times more the risk that they're introducing into their body and to the fundamental change of the brain. The other part that you have to keep in mind in this, which is probably one of the harder things to think about and to talk about with your family, is what is your family history with alcohol abuse or addiction? It's not an easy topic to discuss for some families, and maybe as a parent you're struggling with it right now. But something to keep in mind with our youth, they are 4 times more likely to develop dependence if there is a family history of alcoholism. That means within the parents, the siblings, the aunts, and the grandparents. So if there is a history of alcoholism in your family, you really need to start this discussion, because they could be genetically geared to alcoholism if they start drinking alcohol. And then if they do it before the age of 15, they're compounding the chances of having alcohol dependency or addiction. Because you have to keep in mind, what you're fighting against here, parents, is alcoholism. And alcoholism is a lifelong battle for that child to develop that young. Because keep in mind that 1 out of 6 people who try alcohol will become an alcoholic, depending on the survey you look at, but 1 out of 6. So parents, if you are struggling with alcohol dependency or alcoholism, I encourage you to please go get treatment. But at the same time, I encourage you to talk to your youth in your family about the risk that they have genetically and a predisposition to become an alcoholic. We talked about binge drinking just briefly earlier. So what is binge drinking? I'll just go over that one more time. It's consuming 4 or 5 alcoholic beverages within a 2-hour period. For girls, it's 4, for boys, it's 5, but depending on the weight and the height of the person and what they've eaten. But keep this in mind. They said 16% of our kids reported that they binge drink. Now here's the kicker on this. About 90% of the alcohol consumed by the youth under the age of 21 in the United States is in the form of binge drinks. So the thing to learn from this is our youth, when they go out to drink, they go out to binge, to get drunk. They are not sitting around just having a social drink one at a time, and now that's all I want. 90% of the alcohol consumed by our youth is in the form of binge drinking. They're going out to get drunk, to get blitzed, and that is the purpose. So what's the risk in that? Well, beyond the fact that they can get behind the wheel of a car and drive it, or your child gets into the wheel, behind the wheel of a car and then brings other kids into the car with them and they drive. So the risk of drunk driving accidents increases. But there's also a lot of mental and physical things that can happen at this stage. So they're consuming alcohol in large quantities. You know, they have a couple drinks, their inhibitions go down. Remember that amygdala we talked about earlier, that fight or flight, that emotional center of the brain? Maybe they were nervous, maybe that just kind of goes away because now they're drinking. And now that's easier to consume more because that fight or flight that says, hey, that's enough, we better get out of here, has been quieted down, and they continue to consume alcohol. The other thing that can occur is as they continue to consume alcohol is now comes the blackout stage. We talked about the hippocampus earlier. The hippocampus stores long-term memory. Well, with the increase in alcohol to the body, the hippocampus basically just kind of goes to sleep for a while, and that's called a blackout. They may be functioning, but they won't remember what they did during that time period, and that's a blackout. Another risk of this is you continue the process of drinking, and now we're talking alcohol poisoning. That's when the body has taken in so much alcohol, it can no longer function. Maybe a blackout has occurred, but now the brain stem that controls the breathing, the heart, the ability to wake, starts to go to sleep. The part of the brain that was not meant to go to sleep goes to sleep. Maybe the body then tries to reject the alcohol in the form of vomiting to get it out of the body. But if somebody has passed out drunk and they're on their back, their body can't respond by rolling over to get it out of the throat. And sometimes the kids will die by choking to death. And when you put a bunch of kids together and there's drinking going on and somebody passes out, you've got a whole nother risk that shows up, and it's been in the news. Drunk kids, sexual violence occurs, violence in general occurs, but now you have kids that are drunk and maybe that's where you hear about the house is getting trashed. The inhibitions are gone, the things that would tell them this is wrong has been put to sleep. So parents, binge drinking is an issue. It occurs, and when kids go out to party, that's what they're doing. So we encourage you to please talk to your kids about this and understand that if they are at a party, they need to call and get you to come get them. Don't let them get behind the wheel of a car, but at the same time, they've got to understand that they are putting their body at risk, their safety at risk, and the safety of other people at risk. So where do they get the alcohol? As we talk about, it's the most commonly consumed. Well, they're getting it from home. You know, how many people do have their alcoholic beverages stored someplace in their house? And after a while, maybe because of boredom or friends being in the house or somebody's looking for something, they come across it and they decide, what the heck? Who would know? Maybe they start using it because they're feeling a little bit intimidated. And they want to talk to somebody and they find out, oh, if I drink this, I don't feel so intimidated. I'm a little bit different. Or they're trying to calm a fear or coping skill. Maybe a trauma has occurred. But for whatever reason they start using, a lot of times the first place they get the alcohol is at home. Older siblings, if there are older siblings in the house who are partaking of alcohol, Maybe they're passing it to the younger siblings. Other adults. Let's face it, the kids know where the party houses are. And sometimes the adults, the parents, are providing the alcohol, thinking, well, if they're drinking in my home, I'll take the keys, at least I know they're safe. And this is a warning to those parents. Think about this. You could have a child in your home where the parents are struggling so hard to keep that child away from alcohol because maybe alcoholism is in their family. And you're providing alcohol in an environment that you think is safe, but to that child, it could be a long ride into alcoholism. Besides the fact that in most states, it is illegal to provide alcohol to anyone under the age of 21. You want to be the reason they say no to this. And there's a number of ways to do that. You need to clearly communicate to your teen, to your adolescent, that you as family has decided we don't want you drinking before the age of 21. That is our family value. Maybe you've signed a contract. And if you are looking for a parent-teen contract on drinking or drugs and alcohol, we have them on our website at operationparent.org. So I encourage you to go there and take a look at them. But you want to clearly communicate the boundaries and the consequences if it does occur. Because even though you might think, oh, they're not listening to me, 80% of the teens report that when their parents clearly communicate their thoughts about drugs or alcohol, especially alcohol, they are less likely to drink. So yes, they are listening. They may roll their eyes, they may ask a million questions, but they are listening. So please clearly communicate that you as a parent has decided that we do not want you drinking alcohol until you are legal at the age of 21. Keep in mind, this is a medical issue. You can couch it on morals if you would like, but this is a medical issue because medically you are trying to help their brain fully mature. And if you introduce alcohol to a younger brain, it will change the brain and you also run the risk now of alcoholism. So what else can you do? Get to know their friends. Get to know the parents of the friends. Who are they hanging out with? And when they do say, hey, we're going out, you ask those age-old questions. Well, who are you going with? What are you doing? Where are you going? When are you going to be home? And then verify, especially if you know these parents, you just pick up the phone and say, hey, I just was checking. I'm hearing that they're coming to your house. Are you going to be home? And you may think I'm crazy, but I'm going to ask the question. Any alcohol allowed? How about if you see marijuana and drugs? What are you going to do? Can you just please tell me what your thoughts are? Because what you need to know is, are those parents on the same page as you? And there are a lot of parents out there who are on the same page. So sometimes we get scared in this and we don't want to reach out to the other parents, and you might think, oh, they're going to think I'm crazy. But there are a lot of parents out there who want to keep their kids alcohol-free. So call them up, ask those questions. And by doing that, you're letting your child know, I care about you. Yeah, you might think I'm old-fashioned, but we're going to make sure that you have a good time without alcohol involved. Now here comes the hard thing as they get older, is you got to stay awake. You got to be awake when they come home. And boy, I know it's hard sometimes to be awake when they come home. But be awake. When they walk in that door, give them a big old hug. As Bill Oliver says, wrap your arms around them and pop them one and smell their breath. Talk to them, ask them how they were doing, how was the party. Watch how they are acting. But what you're also doing just by being awake is giving them a reason to say no. Hey, you know what? I can't drink, wish I could, but my mom or dad is going to be up when I get home, and they actually talk to me, and I don't want to go there. So you're giving them another reason to say no. Practice with them different things that they can say no. Sometimes you're just going to be the bad person. My mom and dad are a little crazy. They'll kill me if I drink, so I can't do that. Give them reasons, practice with them, and they don't have to, sometimes they might say, oh, I'm going to shame myself in front of my friends or whatever. So you be the bad guy, and that's okay. You're the parent. Coming back to this is also modeling the behaviors of drinking. As a parent, as an adult, yes, you can have alcoholic beverages. It's legal for you. But model responsible drinking for them. And keep in mind when you go out to restaurants and the whole family's together, I never gave this a thought until I heard a speaker talk about it. And he mentioned, when you go to a restaurant, sometimes you'll see a whole family and somebody is just knocking back the drinks, one of the adults. having 3 or 4, and then watch them get behind the wheel of a car. And who's sitting behind them but the kids? So what you're teaching the kids is, well, I can drink 3 or 4 drinks and I can drive. And for that child or that teenager, what they're thinking is, I can do that too. So you really got to think about it. Be the responsible person, be the responsible parent that just says, you know what, we're out as a family. If you want to have a drink, go right ahead. I just won't drink. And tell your kids that. Tell them, oh, I'm not going to have a drink because I'm going to drive the car and I've got to be completely sober. So when you say to them, don't drink and drive, you're modeling it at the same time and explaining just by going out to dinner, this is what it looks like as an adult. So parents, there are plenty of things you can do. Another one of them is what we have in our office. We have available to parents are alcohol test strips. You put them in their mouth for 3 minutes and you can tell their blood alcohol level. Now, it's a great deterrent. Sit them out on a table. The kids will say, what is that? Well, it's an alcohol test strip. I know you're gonna go out and I'm sure I won't have to ever test you, but in case I thought I needed to, it's there. It's a powerful message to them that you mean it, that you are clear in what you expect of them. And also parents, let them know when they've done great. Give them a pat on the back and say you're showing how responsible you are, you're accountable, and you're being dependable, and you're staying healthy, which is our goal. Ultimately, you want them to be able to graduate from high school, go on to maybe college or work or the military or a trade, whatever it is that they dream that they want to do. But you want them to do it with a clear brain, a clear, healthy body that allows them to make good decisions as an adult. So parents, you are the best prevention to prevent alcoholism, to prevent usage of alcohol by our youth. And I encourage you to step in and do that.
Parents, I want to introduce you to Operation Parent's in-home drug testing kit. It may seem like a radical idea to purchase one of these and have them in your home, but when you stop to think about it, drug testing has become a part of our children's world. They're randomly tested at school, they're tested in sports, and they'll be randomly tested when they get a job. So you want to raise a child who's ready for the real world. And so I myself purchased the very first drug kit when we brought them into Operation Parent. And I told my 17-year-old child that I had it and I would use it. And I could actually see relief in her face. At first she said, "You would really drug test me, Mom?" And I said, "You bet I will." And that was enough. I know she knows I have it. I know she knows I'll use it. But I also know she's not messing with this stuff because we're serious in our home about drug testing our children. This kit will test for all the common opiates that are being abused right now. It contains a lot of great information on drugs and alcohol and what's out there and how to talk to your children. So it's more than what the typical kit is that you would buy in a drugstore. In addition to that, it can be complicated sometimes to interpret the results or to know how to do the test. And there's a business card in here with Lisa Lee's name on it, and you can call her anytime and get some personal assistance at a time when sometimes you need it the most. So I hope you'll give serious consideration to purchasing a drug kit for your home. Again, it gives your child an honest, powerful excuse not to ever even go there with drugs and alcohol. Keep parenting, you're doing a great job.